What do you think about this track, Nick?
Let's hear it.
Nice, eh? It's got a good groove.
Mate, that's dirty. And not in a good way.
What do you mean? Listen to that bass line.
That's shite, bro. You've got a lot of learning to do, my friend.
What about the snare? The snare's brilliant.
Nah, mate.
Oh, my phone's going. Oh, it's Mr. Big.
What's he want?
Let's find out. Yo.
Mr. Big here. I've got something you want. It's going to cost you 50 grand.
50 grand? Fuck this guy.
What's he saying?
He's wanting money for something that we have, apparently.
What? Are you worried?
Nah. Oh shit, he's just sent me a video. Fuck, he's got Max and Mitch. We need go.
Fuck.
Let's go.
Fuck off, Mr. Big. Welcome back to the Back2Back podcast with myself, Nick Checketts.
And me, Paddy the Rego.
How are we?
I'm not too bad, how are you?
Yes, good. We are, as you can see, we're not in our usual
Location.
We're in the famous ice factory in Perth. Have you been here before?
I have. I've DJ'd here, about a year ago, maybe a year and a bit ago, when Mulgrab was played out in the courtyard. What about you? You played here?
Yes, I did my first night years of promoter.
Oh, is this where you started?
Yeah. If you could explain the ice factory to someone.
It's,
What would you say?
there's literally no
Describe
way
it.
to describe this place. It's like a music studio, a nightclub. Like, they've got a terrace. It's like right next to a prison. I don't know how you describe this place.
So we're in the recording studio, the
Yeah.
VIP room, and we've had some wild nights up here. As you can see, the recording studio behind us.
I think it's probably time we introduce our guest, Craigie Knowes. Before we start, lads, can I offer you a shot of Jaeger?
Absolutely.
We have it, what, the normal one, cold brew?
I'll go the cold brew, please.
Cold brew?
I'll try something different. I'll go with the cold brew as well.
I've been waiting for them to bring out the cold brew one because when we were on holiday in Croatia, we had been up for quite a long time, and we were making coffee and we didn't have any milk left, so we ended up putting Jaeger in the coffee.
Yeah.
And it tasted. I can't remember if it tasted really nice or like battery acid, but we seemed to quite like it. So this is the next step, is actual cold brew. So
you guys tell us a bit about yourself, for people that maybe don't know or know.
So, I suppose what we are, I'm Max, he's Mitch. We run a label called Craigie Knowes, but also gets called Craigie Knowes.
But
we've kind of had a bit of a play on that as well, because it might be at the point now where I'm starting to come to terms that I've mispronounced it my entire life, because the entire rest of the world pronounces it Knowes. And I even catch myself now calling it Craigie Knowes to everyone.
Just caught on.
And it's just caught on, and we've got some like new t-shirts and things we're doing that like have that play on words in it. Some things around that are going to come out sort of later this year. So we've embraced that. But yeah, we're a record label, a club night, based at La Cheetah in Glasgow. Obviously not done anything for a year or so, but it's,
When did this all start?
so it started back in 2015, the record label, and then we did club nights for a few years now. But we always tried to make it a sort of, I don't know how you compare it, but there are other people who
it
do
was kind of
similar
like
things.
an
as in-
all-encompassing thing.
Yeah.
So it was like we DJ as a duo as Craigie Knowes as well, and it's just kind of been. Sorry, my phone might be ringing because my wife is heavily pregnant.
So if it disappears, you know why.
Yeah. So yeah, we kind of do a bit of everything because we both got into it when, I mean, we both started DJing when we were like 17, 18 in the pub at the end of my parents' street, and we used to put on nights there on a Thursday. It was called the Malt House.
Right.
And
So that, I mean, Craig, is it not a road in Perth though?
It is.
Craigie
Yeah.
Knowes is a road,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
So
that's-
Max grew up there.
Yeah, so it's Craigie Knowes Road, and then there's a hill behind the house where Craigie Knowes Road is, and it sort of looks over Perth. It's actually from where we're sitting out, looking out the window here. You can almost see it, so it's pretty close to where we're at the moment.
There's a care home there as well, where we'll hopefully.
That's
end
hopefully
up.
where we'll
Hopefully we
wind up.
reside in
Yeah.
All roads are leading
So
back
you,
there.
you
Yeah.
started DJing, you said at 17. Is
Yeah.
that in Perth? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was in the malt. One of our friends basically got a little MIDI controller when for his birthday, and he never really had. He was interested in like electronic music, but he wasn't. He basically wasn't as big of a show off as us. So we basically nicked it off him, and ended up getting into dance music through like I'd always listened to stuff that my uncle had played, so he like introduced me to like old like Relief record stuff like Chicago, really tracky stuff, and then he also listened to I don't know if you've heard them, they're like an old drum and bass band called Red Snapper. They're from London.
Nah.
So it was stuff like that, and then Daft Punk's Homework album as well. So that's where I kind of got my first taste in dance music, and then we kind of started putting on nights in the Malt House at like 17, 18, and I ended up being like really busy. The New Year's party that we had there had more people attending that on Facebook than Sankey's did for their like 2009 New Year's Eve party, I think it was. And then the speakers used to smell like fish.
Well, after they ran for too long, they like heated up, and they were like they must have some sort of mold in them.
Oh, and
the,
it's just
the place would
stinks out the
start to
place.
smell of like people would walk in the door and be like,
So going back to that, like when you were 17, what was it? Why did you want to do a night? Like was there something lacking in the city?
Yeah, well, there wasn't really anything that was going on, and there was a couple of older, like our friends' big brothers, and a couple of older people that we hung about with. They'd been to like Ibiza and stuff, and kind of brought back some, like
they just had like loads of funny stories, and it all seemed to come back to like DJing and nightclub stuff. And I was always like, I want to do that stuff.
That sounds like a fun
I
living.
want to like have a laugh and like go and do this.
And what year was that?
I was like 2008, 9.
Yeah.
And was there nothing? What was happening this? Because I was too young
Yeah.
at that point in time.
Well, so were we. That was the problem.
Yeah,
We didn't really know because, well, essentially when we started that party at that pub, we weren't old enough to drink in the pub. So it didn't really we weren't even old enough to go clubbing.
Yeah.
Are you drinking?
Yeah. Well, because I mean, it wasn't a very busy pub. There was maybe like 4 or 5 regulars, and it was quite funny when they would come in, and there's like these 60-year-old guys, and they'd come in and they'd get hit in the eye with like a strobe light and be like, what the fuck is going on? Trying to sit with like a
sound system like playing and all these like underage kids, and it'd just be standing at the bar like their dog. Just like,
John Smith.
Yeah.
Old man Jenkins at the bar.
Yeah, and so from there it kind of got busy, and then we kind of stopped doing it for a while. Max went and stayed in Ibiza for a couple of summers, and we kind of just kept like doing stuff, kind of like house parties and that. And then after a while, we decided to put on a Christmas Eve party in another club in town, and it ended up, the club can hold about 200 people, and they ended up being about 500-600 people like crammed in there. And the club owners from here found out about it, and actually during that night, because it was Christmas Eve, there was like mass was going on in the church opposite, and about 200 like wrecked folk ended up like bursting into mass and like ruining it.
Mass.
And yeah, so from there, the people who run this club, and they ran another couple of clubs in town, just got in touch with us, and they're like, yeah, do you want to like start putting on a party, because this place has been closed for a number of years. But yeah, just since then it's kind of been quite, we've just kept doing it, and we just seem to be
I tell you, were you running nights all the way up until like COVID?
Yeah, we were. So
So there was Groovement before, which was the one that was run here, which was a huge collective of people that started it, which was the story you just heard of how it started. And then slowly that group of a huge group of people that would help to dissipated, and it ended up with just a few people. I left because I lived in Glasgow, so I only helped out with the first couple. I really didn't do much after that. And then Mitch and a few others continued it on up until quite late on, and then Mitch only dropped out recently. So it was something that gradually became a smaller group of people running it over time. But running nights, we still obviously had the residency and the night that we run at La Cheetah in Glasgow. So that will hopefully we'll be able to get back to doing that once it.
So when you Mitch said you were in Ibiza for a couple of summers.
Yeah, what were we up to over there?
I just went with like a one-way ticket with one of my mates because I just kind of left school and I just
fuck it.
Yeah, it was one of those. I just was like, I just wanted to go and do something, see what's up, go have a laugh, and I did. Very much so.
Did you get like, being out there? Did you go to the parties and that kind of?
Yeah.
Really, were you DJing out there as well?
No, that was right at the start when I had started sort of DJing. I found it difficult to like. There was guys who were running nights and stuff. They wouldn't really give me a chance, but I wasn't really that into it. I was more just there to party. I wasn't really like, and I was shit. Like I was really shit. My taste in music was rubbish. I wasn't a good DJ, so I probably did myself a favour. That's probably the reason that I didn't get any gigs.
That's the thing as well.
Because I was like, I didn't know anything at that point. It was more just a chance to go and have some fun. But yeah, I did get the bug from it, and I kind of maybe realised that maybe there is something that I could do here, and give me a bit of something to bring back with me. And
I mean, I found that in Ibiza when I went to some of the clubs. You go there and you're just like, wow. Some of these parties, and it gives you the inspiration to come back here and do stuff. Obviously with Groovement, I remember being when I came like 17, 18, Groovement was like the night here. And the Ice Factory, that's where I started my first club night here.
History.
And obviously it's such a cool venue. How would you describe it to people?
It's basically just like, if it was in a bigger city, it'd be like a super club, because there's so many different ways. Like they had another room downstairs which was in like a basement called the Casbah.
That's where you started.
Excuse me. Yeah, it was like kind of Moroccan themed, and it was really dark and like low ceiling, and that was really good. We had our first couple of nights in there, and there was maybe you could only fit about 150 people in there, but then they could spill out into the courtyard, so we'd have 300-400 people in.
And the DJ booth within the Casbah as well sort of transitioned between indoor and outdoor. There was an outdoor part to it as well.
Like half and half.
I loved that space. Obviously, it's turned into studios really now, but from the whole history of the time we've been going to the Ice Factory and knew the Ice Factory, going as a punter or going to DJ, that was my all-time favourite. Was some of the parties in there.
A lot
special.
Of
that
fun.
was
How long
one
ago
that
was
really
this?
clicked with us.
This is like 8 or 9 years ago now,
Right,
so
quite a
we
while
were still really young. But I actually found a recording of our first night, and we went through a phase of like, at that age we were like, oh, we're just only gonna, because we started off on a MIDI controller, then we're like moved on to CDJs, and then we all kind of went into vinyl, and it was like an analogy I would use is like, so my uncle grew up on a farm and they only had goat's milk, and he had goat's milk until he was like 12, then tried cow's milk and was like, oh, goat's milk tastes like piss. So then we were listening to this music for years and years, and then we got to like 18, 19, or maybe slightly older, and then we went through to Subculture and listened to Harry and Dominic, and I was like, we've effectively just been drinking goat's piss or goat's milk for the past couple of years, and this is cow's milk. So then I was like, then we were all just like completely obsessed with it. So we would go through, our friends Mark and Mike shared a flat, so on the weekends where Harry and Dominic, we would usually only go through for residence nights for Subculture, and so what we would do is we'd get like a couple of cars full, drive through, we'd go through for a bang on opening, just sit and watch them warm up, be the first people on the dance floor and the last people to leave, drive back, turn on the decks in the flat at Abbott Street and just have them on until like Sunday night. And the nights that Harry and Dom weren't playing all night, we would just go into Mark and Mike's on Friday night, turn on the decks, and they didn't even have a TV in the house. All they had was a set of turntables in the living room, and they would get turned on Friday night and they wouldn't get turned off until Sunday night when everyone had to go back to work on Monday.
So the bar kind.
Yeah, pretty much. So it was just a kind of, we'd all started on like a controller, then like progressed to vinyl, and we all we wanted to do was play vinyl, and we did that for years. But going back to like the first night that we did, I listened to it, and we all tried to play all vinyl, and the mixing is horrendous to say the least. But it's kind of nice going back and listening to how like clunky it is, and we're by no means like perfect now.
I think that was the thing that we don't really do is I think because we're a bit older now, and we are like, I don't care so much about what I did in the past, or what we did in the past, or before I tried to hide away.
It's nice to look back
kind of run away from like, oh well, here's another label that I ran that I didn't want people to know that I had done this other stuff, or what type of music I was into at certain points, because I thought they would think badly of like what I do now. But now I've got older, I don't care.
Did you have any other labels that you were running?
Max used to run one.
I ran one when I was like 18, and the thing is, I'm not embarrassed by it at all. I really liked that label. It's just like more house music sort of thing. What was it called? It was called Made Fresh Daily. Right, so okay. That's how I learned to press vinyl, how I've learned about distribution. Like, I learned everything that went into the label now.
Yeah, that's the point. You talked about that last.
And that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, like, and I think it's something that I need to get out of my head sometimes. Even I would just overthink a track. If I put out my sound before, if I put out my SoundCloud, I'd take it down like 3 months later.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this is shit, but
not necessarily because it was the wrong style. I'm just like, that's not the standard that I think
you would set yourself now.
And the thing is, I didn't want, if I was sending stuff out to labels, I didn't want them to look and be like, oh, he's made that,
Yeah. The thing is though, if it's good, it's good. Like, there's people who we've put records out from who, like, say like 6-7 years ago, they're making totally different stuff, and it's not that it's not good, it's just different. Yeah. So I think I mean,
it comes down to what kind of mood, vibe you're feeling at the time, and you're learning more techniques while producing. It can completely impact your sound as well.
100%.
When you were doing those first parties at Groovement, what kind of stuff were you playing at that point?
It was like very New York
style house music, like Chicago house music sometimes, but New York house music.
So it was like My Love Is Underground.
Because that was that was the hype then. That was what, like, in my opinion, was one of the big things that brought back the vinyl thing, especially from a house perspective, to like the peak of where it was around that time. Mm-hmm. Like 2011, 2010, 2011, 2012 was that label and what they did, and then
the Spanish label Saft.
There was loads of like labels around that time, and it was kind of, they were releasing what was essentially like throwback house music, and it just worked because
some Bicep stuff as well. Actually,
Bicep used to make loads of stuff like that. Like
that. I mean, it's I've just gone mad to the vinyl recently.
Yeah,
the lockdown gave me a chance to sort of have that time to just go through back catalogues, and
it's the best way.
And what I do, I'll get a record if it's not like available online. You know what I mean? So like, I look for those sort of rare, 1995 to like 2005, that sort of era.
Yeah.
I try and get those old stuff, and I'm getting a wee good collection going.
Yeah.
But like, in terms of the Groovement parties, what you started in Cash Bar, and then when did you? Because I remember Groovement, you were getting big numbers at the end, weren't you?
Yeah. So
what was the?
We ended up, like, some nights we were pushing 1,000 people, and that was the way we used to do it was we would do the first 3 or 4 nights were all residents, and we kind of built up a reputation. Was like, it doesn't really matter who's playing, all the residents are good. Although listening back, like, there was a lot of like shonky mixes, but no one really noticed back then anyway. And so we do residence nights, and then we would do guest resident night. So first guest we had was Dominic from Sub Club, and that was really busy. That was on a Halloween, and then after that we just ended up, we probably couldn't do it now because people wouldn't turn up, because people have kind of developed the taste that they have, whereas before everyone was so like, it felt like the whole crowd was so new to it that they would just be completely receptive of whatever we would put on. So we just booked people that we wanted. What
was your biggest guest that you booked?
We booked Mark Farina. Flew him over from San Francisco, and he played. That was really busy. And he's about my height. He's tiny, and he drank a whole bottle of, was it whiskey?
It was whiskey.
Yeah, he drank like a whole bottle of whiskey, and by the end of the night, like his eyes were facing different directions. He was trying.
I remember there was a dog in the. This is a vivid. I can't remember how, because my memory is terrible when I'm drunk. And during that era, I was drunk all the time, like permanently. And I just remember vividly seeing Mark Farina just like stumbling down the stairs, just where we were there. And there was the people who we rented the sound system from had a dog. And they opened the van, and the dog hopped out, and he was going, chasing after it, like as drunk as a man can be while still being on his feet, like
this loose
doggy, like that's like what is going on? Because we were still kids ourselves then. It was just like weird to see folk that like you kind of looked up then, see them in the thing, and realize
chasing a dog.
Yeah, like everyone's just like all these people and all the DJs that at that point they were still sort of like stars and idols to you. But then the more you meet them, you actually realize they're just exactly the same as you.
Yeah.
Exactly the same as you.
And we generally did our research on people because we didn't want to book anyone that like wasn't sound and wasn't like gonna be like cool with us being like complete novices. Yeah, and like just DJs that we thought were really good. But like we did get like some stuff wrong. Like the first guest we booked was Dominic, like I said, and took him out for dinner, and like the meals arrived. And Mike ended up eating Dominic's starter, and like Mike's never turned up, so Dominic never got a starter, and we were just like, "Oh, this is going so badly." Then we're like, "We'll take you to a pub," and we were sitting in the pub, and a guy recognised Dom, like came up to him and was like, "Fucking like."
Oh, somebody we knew as well. He came over. He was, "Oh, how you doing?"
No, this was the guy had the subby tattoo.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so the guy had like a sub-club tattoo and was like showing it to Dom, and then another guy came over and was like speaking to us, and then like Dom had said, "Oh, this is really nice in here," because there was like an open fire and stuff. And we looked over to the bar and someone just got bottled. And
by the guy who had just come over and spoken to us, and the glass smashed off this person's head, and this glass landed all over the table, and Dom didn't move an inch, and he went, "Got nice friends, don't you?" I was like, "It's not like,
yeah, it's not like this." And
I swear it's not like this all the time.
Then like a couple of months later, he like messaged me and was like, "What's the name of that pub? I'm going to take my wife there for my anniversary." So obviously made an impression, but like now, yeah, we'd see him as like a good friend. He's like helped us out and just like been so welcoming to like two little idiots from Perth who were like just completely obsessed with subculture, and that night, because it was just such an education going to see them.
And that was the thing, you went religiously, whereas I was kind of in and out. I would go sometimes, but at the same time that you were going religiously to subculture, I was a resident at Sub Club during the week, so I play every single Wednesday, but that was part of something different. That
was Sub Russell, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I did that for like 5 years with a great group of people.
So how did that come about then?
As well,
again, the same guy who we got the controller from.
Yeah, same thing.
I think this guy deserves a shout
out.
Yeah,
Callum Asher.
That was a really nice
yeah, no, it was that memory of those times is quite hazy, but I was at work. I worked at TK Maxx.
One too many Jaegers.
Yeah, well, a couple. Yeah, it was like I was working at TK Maxx at the time, and he like somehow got in touch with me. I'm sure he like phoned the shop, and then the shop, he told him it was my dad, and they were like paged him through to the stockroom where I worked, and he was like, "Oh, it's actually Asher." He was like, "Can you play Sub Club tonight?" And I was like, well, "I've only ever played like one gig in a club in life." I was like, What? And he's like, "Right, one of my mates who like with at uni is like got a night, and the DJ's dropped out, and I've just bigged you up, and I've told them you're amazing, and they can't get anyone else because it's like 2 hours till you would have to like leave, and can you do it?" And I was just like, yeah. So I just left work straight away.
That must have been nerve-wracking.
I just like jumped on the train through and like took my like, because at that time CDJs like you actually use CDs. Like I didn't have USB, like it wasn't a thing.
Back in my day.
So I had like I had this like wallet of CDs like going up to figure like shit in my pants, and just like went up and did it, and they enjoyed it, and then I became a resident.
Straight off the back of that first gig.
Yeah, and I'm not saying for a second that's because I'm an incredible DJ. I just think that it was a right place, right time. Yeah, it was just the right place, right time thing, and yeah, and there it was for 5 years. It was
nice one.
Fantastic.
I mean, talk to us a bit about you say Groovemen, going back to Groovemen. The dynamic of loads of mates doing it. What were the benefits and what were?
There wasn't really that many benefits because.
Oh, yeah, it was because remember
it was
that
quite funny.
The photo of everyone together. When you think about the spirit and that thing of all the people that were there at that time, it really it was good.
Yeah, we went to the thing is we would have meetings with the club owners, and we'd turn up and there'd be like 12 of us, and the club owners, we'd be in like this small room on this massive table.
Because I remember,
and it'd just be like 8. Basically, we were like 8. Like there's 12 excited puppies at the table with these like older guys who had the money to book stuff. So we were all just like firing like loads of questions, saying, "Oh, we should like let's book Mark Farina, let's get DJ Sneak." Or what about Lord of the Isles? Just like spouting names at them who they obviously will never have heard
of. Did they front up some money then?
They did to begin with. Speaking of being excited, I'm not going to name him, but the first time they gave us a budget, because they used to put on nights in the 90s when budgets were like a lot bigger. Like there's people who we know who in the 90s to do a remix you got 25 grand.
Oh.
Yeah, so there was like so much more money in the music industry in the 90s, but so they were still kind of working off that sort of structure, like big money, and they were like, so like we'll give you a 10 grand budget. So idiot here straight away goes on first agent. I'll not name the DJ because he knows us now, and
I don't think he knows that it was us.
It was us that did it. So I was like, DJ. I was like, DJ fee $7.5 grand. So obviously, like his agent gets it through, and he's like, hello, like yes. So then we'd been up at the flat, and we'd been up for a couple of days, and they were like, who should we get? And I was like, oh, offered so and so like $7.5 grand. Then we were like, oh, class. And then like a couple hours later, someone was like, that seems like a lot of money. And then I was like, it does actually, like I'll go on that, because we didn't really have that many friends in the industry at that point. So I asked someone and they were like, nah, I'm sure like I know someone who booked him for like 800 quid. I'm like, fuck. So then like I emailed the agent and was just like, oh, something's happened at the club, like the roof's fallen through or something, and then like we can't do it. And then they were like, he's going to be very angry about this. He was so excited to play. I was like, well, he wasn't excited to play because he's never heard it. He was excited to get a new car from the money that he was going to get. So yeah, the dynamic to begin with was haphazard to say the least. But after a couple, because we all used to get like free drinks when we used to have these meetings with the guys, and I think once the club owners stopped dishing out free pints at the meetings, the guys who weren't really interested in like the bookings and stuff kind of fell by the wayside, and we ended up with like 3 of us, like myself, Mark and Mike, who were running the night.
I have a very vivid memory of sitting at that long table where we used to have this meeting with them, because it was like this long table with everyone sitting around it, and one of the first meetings we had, because it was a kind of group of people from different groups of friends that had come together to do this thing.
Yeah.
We were all quite young at that point. Quite a few of us were like misbehaved in some of their other establishments, and were had been barred and things from other. Yeah. And he stood at the end of the table and he went, "Some of your faces I recognise," and he looked at all of the ones that were banned from at least one of his pubs or clubs. And he went, "Some of them I do not, but we'll do this as water under the bridge, and we'll start this relationship again."
Yeah.
But I remember that so vividly, and I'm like looking us all in the eyes, like
fuck.
Yeah.
But no, it ended up working out quite well, and like this year would have been the 8th or 9th year it had been running. So, yeah, I mean, it was so good, but I think just we kind of like grew apart, and then our music taste kind of changed slightly. So, and because like the stuff that I do with Max is like the main focus now, I didn't have enough time to like do Groovement and the Craigie Knowes stuff as well at the same time. So, and this is kind of what we're wanting to focus on more. But I'm sure they'll start up again once it all kicks up. But like Mark and Mike who run it are like, have got really, really good taste, and they're like really knowledgeable. So I'm sure they'll
What was like your kind of transition into going into a record label? Was that like how long down the line
so
was that?
That was in 2015. I moved to Glasgow. I had just worked odd jobs and stuff since I left school, and I decided to go and study. So I moved to Glasgow to study, and I lived with my friend Xander, who releases music as the Borough Connection and as Dreamy. He was in Berlin now, but he's always been like a staple of the label.
Yeah.
Done loads of stuff with us. But I just decided when I was there I was going to do a label, and not just a label, but try and do some other stuff. Just like make a label as the primary focus, but just try and do, you know, offshoots and what we want to do, the fundraisers that we do every year, and just have a bit of fun with something.
Like a brand itself.
Well, that was it, yeah. And that wasn't the way I viewed it, like I want to build this like big brand or anything. It was just like, I want to do something, I want to have like an umbrella of just, this is it, and anything I want to do within music, it'll
falls
come
under this umbrella, yeah.
Yeah, so I started the label, and then Mitch and I were DJing as well. We always DJed together.
Yeah, so were you the two that DJed?
Is it like the Craigie cartel?
Yeah,
it was like kind of like tongue in cheek, and then it kind
stupid.
of like grew into something. We're like, oh shit, we're gonna have to like, because we started getting bookings and stuff. We're like, can't call ourselves that,
because
we're in like
because it came from a night when we were like, once again, partying.
Oh, because we used to have.
And we had these like masks, like these face
masks. We had
masks.
the residency up in Aberdeen as well.
Yeah, we had the
for, like,
residency
2
in
years.
Aberdeen, which was strange for
At the tunnels.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And the guys that ran that were amazing. So they booked us. We were like the first guests, and we got on really well with the guys. And
there's some stories out of that.
Yeah.
There's times in Aberdeen, because that was funny. That
they,
is like,
so the first night we played for them, it was the first night they put on, and they put us as a guest. And after about half an hour, I was like, we were looking for one of the guys who was running the night, and I was like standing on something. I was like, what's that? And it was the guy who ran the night, and he was like, eyes rolling the back of his head, and he was like, don't mind me. And I was like, you all right? And they were like, he's like that all the time. And what had happened?
This is a regular occurrence.
The DJ booth had like a sort of swing door that you had to duck under to get out, and we were like, that door's got awful stiff. No, like, I had to look over and shine a torch into the darkness, and this promoter's just lying there like pull him away, and he was like, don't mind me. And
then what happened later on that night was he'd taken too much whatever, and then he started tripping out, and he thought that this girl's face was like a wall that had beetles coming out of it. So he like went like this and like started like touching this girl's face, and she was like, what are you doing? And he was like, I'm trying to get rid of the beetles. She was like, what are you on about? Like, he was just completely tripping out. That was funny actually, because we used to help them with bookings as well.
Yeah.
And they booked Neville Watson, who's like an amazing DJ and just like such a nice guy. And at the end of the night, they were like paying him. And Robbie, who ran the night, was like counting out the cash, and he was 1, 2, 3, and then he was going,
you get to about 10, and he was
like just start gurning out, and then he'd get to like 10, and then he'd be like, start again, and then he went 1, 2, 3.
And I was like, so I was like, we were guests as well, essentially, because residents. I was like, please just give me the money, and I had to like take off. I was like, sorry about that, and I was like, counting it to Neville.
Neville's like standing there like.
Yeah, did you fire up there, and like, did you get hotel up there when you played?
Yeah, well
we did, and then we started staying with them because
well we started staying with them. They were like, oh well, we've just booked an Airbnb that we're all gonna stay in. And I was like, right. They were like, we'll just have a couple of us back, and then was it Jack Wickham?
I'm sure
yeah, it was like a Halloween. So Jack Wickham, he's on like One Records and stuff like that, and he came up and played, and we all went back to this Airbnb. And then like 2 minutes after getting there was like 150 people in here. Yeah. And I was just like,
that same boy that had like jammed the door closed, one of the promoters, he was hilarious. Honestly, I've seen him a few times in recent years, and he's just like
still lying there.
It's like totally straight edge now, and just like you can't imagine it. But it was just I remember that night we got there to that party in the Airbnb, and it was packed full of people. And he just disappeared, and no one's seen him for like the whole night. And it was like we were about to leave in the morning to go get our train home, and like about 5 minutes before we left, he just walked into the living room, and he was like soaking, like
yeah, no clothes on,
like soaking wet. Like the clothes that he did have on were soaked, and we're like, well, like, where have you been for the last 7 hours? And he was like, just lying on the grass. It was lovely.
Face down in the grass.
We lie down.
Yeah.
Just like lie out in the grass, and like snow angels with no snow, just lying in the grass for the last like 7 hours. He was like, "Oh, it was lovely." You're a strange boy.
I remember like you guys were my second booking at Cab Vault, and I felt bad because the night was shite.
Yeah, it wasn't that busy, but
no, you know, I mentioned it on other podcasts. Like the first night was good, and then I obviously went in to book the
terrible booking, to be fair.
The Craigie Cartel, the Craigie Cartel. But when did you start getting bookings then? Like from the Craigie Cartel, because obviously
it was just kind of, it was like from Aberdeen, and then I don't really know. Then we'd started the label by then, hadn't we?
Yeah, so the label was going for a while before that, because that was like 2017 was thingy, so it was a couple of years in, and then it was when it really started to change was when we stopped using the Craigie Cartel thing, because it was a bit stupid. It was meant to be a joke anyway, but then we realised it started to like work.
It's got to float it, yeah.
So yeah, it did, but it had kind of like weird connotations as well.
Yeah, it just didn't feel comfortable with it. It just felt a bit daft, to be honest. And then we were like, well, we do everything else under the label, the night, the everything. So why do we just not DJ it as the same thing as well? So when we took that, that part of it, that's when the bookings started to come in, and I think it was because we did the sort of mini tour thing we did around Holland.
Yeah, we ended up getting an agent off the back
so we
of
played
that.
at Red Light Radio, and then we played at Clone Records in store, like did a live stream from there.
And then we did Operator as well
in Rotterdam. We did all that with the Borough Connection, and after that we had like a little bit of, we had done a couple of things. We got a few of the bigger podcasts of that.
We're
the biggest.
Yeah,
I meant mix series from that time. Like I'd picked us up and we did a few mixes, and then after
it's like
that,
Ransom Note and Honey Sound System and stuff
like
that.
And it started to then pick up a bit after that. We got like an agent off the back of it, and it worked well. And that was it. After that, we were playing fairly often.
And the label, obviously, what was your thinking going into creating the label, and
would you say like you have a specific kind of sound that you look
but like
for?
even for someone who's maybe watching that's wanting to start a label, like what was the early process of it all?
So I suppose the first thing you can take is what I said before, which was that I had a label before. That's where I learnt all the mistakes, and I say I because I'm the one that kind of looks after the label side of it, whereas Mitch looks after like the DJ and stuff, everything to do with us as a DJ act. Mitch like takes that and runs with all that stuff. Our mix series, Mitch looks after all that stuff. Whereas the label side of it, like the technical part of that, I just naturally fell into that role because I had learnt it through that label I'd ran on my own. So it was really, that's where I learnt it, was that sort of sandbox environment of a label when I was 18 years old.
Just jumping straight into it,
jumping into it, clueless, and being like, okay, well, how do you get a record pressed? How do I, where's a mastering house that can master this? Who can make me some artwork to the right specifications for producing the labels and stuff for it? How do I distribute it? I distributed it myself, stupidly. In the beginning, it was a pretty arduous task. But just learning by doing it, which is something I feel like.
I think it's good.
Yeah, which is now, if I kind of feel scared with some things, to jump in like that. But that's like a testament to that approach, like just literally I don't know a thing about this, I don't know how it works,
just kind of see how it goes.
But I've committed to doing it
to learn things. And the sound, so what was you thinking behind the sound? Did you want, right, I want to go down this route, I want to be super underground in the sense, do you know what I mean? Like,
it wasn't that, it was
the first release had like, the first release we ever did had like Bicep and Move D on it, so it wasn't immediately like underground. It was like, and I think that's probably we kind of started. I mean, we wouldn't have like.
Was this the first release
ever?
Yeah. That's a pretty big release to have as your first
one. It was
one.
a fundraiser. So the thing was, we wanted to. That's what I said. We wanted to use the thing as a platform to do more than just run a label that does a couple of releases a year. We wanted to do fundraisers. We wanted to do parties. We wanted to do whatever we wanted to do, and that was one of our things, was the fundraiser. And it seemed like a good place to start because it was like, you wanted to do something interesting. I wanted to do something that like meant something. It's just, there were so many releases coming out at that point in time where it was just like, everything was, it's the same way now. It's difficult to like differentiate yourself. So we're like, let's do something we care about. Let's do something that's going to make, a bit of good. It's going to do something that's a bit fun. We can bring a load of different artists together that you wouldn't usually be on a release. And we kind of just shot for the stars with it, and we were just like, let's just go ambitious and try and get the best people we can, or our favourite artists at that time. And I think they must have seen something. I don't know what they've seen.
How did you get in contact with them then?
just by any way we could.
Yeah,
that's
put
the same
an email
way.
or like people like someone that knows them.
Yeah,
or
it's always a mutual connection.
Yeah,
or a friend or something.
Calling a couple of favours.
Yeah,
well, so was the sense that you just said, "Oh, do you have anything for me?"
Well, that's it. I had a chat with them, and then they obviously, with the bigger acts like Bicep, they had management, if I remember, at that time, even though it was 2015, because they were still huge at that point. They'd done stuff for like 3, 4, 5 years, and obviously the blog they had run for way longer than that. But it was more just a case of letting them know what the vision of what we were trying to do was. Similar to you guys, what you do. The best thing to do to get people to work with you is just be honest with them.
Yeah.
Just tell them
straight up.
Here's my vision. This is what I want to do. I'm being ambitious with it. And I'm be honest with it about my experience, whatever, and I'm going to give it a go. So that's all you can do.
They've obviously seen that you've got like the right ambition for it, and that's why they've jumped on board with it.
And I hope that people that did stuff with us in the past, when we were a little bit more amateur in what we did, because we were either naive or inexperienced, that hopefully now, from where the labels got to now, I hope they can look back and not be look on it poorly. They can go, oh, well, this is where they are now, and I'm kind of proud that I was there in the embryotic stage of what they started. So I hope people can take that away from it.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the best way, dealing with anything with booking nights. And it's one of the reasons we've got quite a good relationship with people, because we're just honest lads.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Honest lads.
Honest lads. Like,
good honest men.
Good honest lads. Do you know what I mean? But it's helped us in the long run as well, building good relationships.
Yeah. People remember it. If you're nice to somebody, they're obviously going to remember it.
Yeah. Well,
this is a small world. This music thing as well. Like, everybody knows everybody. You don't get away with being a bad person, an insincere person, or a crook in this game scene, for long. It just doesn't work.
It goes against everything that the scene stands for anyway. So it's meant
people try it, but it never lasts. They fade away, or they just get exiled, and it doesn't benefit anyone. People, some people make money out of the dance music industry, but at the end of the day, it's a labour of love. Anyone who can say that they can,
in it for the passion.
Anyone that can say they can sustain themselves, and
they get a bad name and it goes round, because you hear stories about the same guys that pop up. Do you know what I mean?
You absolutely do. Yeah.
And I wouldn't want stories like that going around.
No, of course.
But how did that? Obviously, those first releases. What was the response?
Yeah.
And what was your feelings?
So the fundraiser, it went really well. We got picked up because it was sort of kind of like a novel thing, and it had a mix of like new artists, some fairly established artists, and some bigger artists. It was kind of like it's now I do some like PR work on the side, and looking back on what that project was, if I was to take that on as like one of my clients now, that's a dream gig, is taking on something like that, like an interesting project from a new label with a really varied group of artists with an interesting backstory. So that was really well received. And then the first EP we ever did was with Carl Finlow, that came shortly after that. And
when was this released?
So this was 2015 as well.
Yeah.
I think the Carl Finlow one came out in early 2016, because the fundraiser came out late 2015, so it was early 2016. And we pressed 400 copies of it, and we've sold like 200. We really struggled to shift the second 200, and they slowly sort of trickled out over the next few years.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a video sort of emerged of Dixon closing Dimensions on the final night at like the biggest stage with that like really slow melodic tune from that EP.
Shit.
And they're like, which was weird, because it was just like not the type of DJ that would play that. It was a reissue of a track from that he had done like way back, and it was just like a bizarre one. And then now that record, like, it's like 200 quid on Discogs or something.
Fuck off.
And it was like we couldn't give them away. Like,
that's
all
it
so
takes.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it on YouTube. Like when I'm looking at when I'm seeing clips of DJs that playing it, and then they play this one track and suddenly it goes up 200
Yeah,
quid.
It's like the stock market.
Yeah, well, it's like there's a Baby Pop record on Relief, and how much did you get it for? Like 2 quid?
No, I got it for like 10 quid or something. I used to play it a lot.
Zip played it.
Baby Pop, Deep Techno. And who was it as well? Was it Midland or someone played it in like an RA mix? It was like years and years after. I remember looking at the price of it, like, what on earth, man? I got this thing for like a tenner. Yeah, but it's I don't know. That's the dynamic of the whole thing. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and then after that, in terms of sound, it was just anything that we liked, we would put out. So
you wouldn't say you've got like a
there is
specific
like a specific. Well,
what would be like your categories to meet if somebody was to send you a track?
People try and pigeon. Like, we were getting called an electro label for a while.
Yeah, which was weird because people were like, oh, you're like, there's an electro
see why
label.
People maybe thought that.
Yeah. But the thing was, if you look at the catalogue of music, then you would see like, well, there's a house record, then a techno record, then an electro record, then a house record, then an electro. So it'd be like
and then
a bit
there'd be
of
like a breaks one as well.
But it's because electro at that point was popular, so they were the ones that sold better, that people would then go, oh, you're an electro label, because they were the ones that sold better, and that was how they recognised the label.
Get more clicks on the story.
But if you look at the catalogue, it kind of, there's a bit of everything, and like it always has been.
This latest release, Class. I mean,
yeah, it's kind of like a mix of like tech house and
garage.
I love
that underpinning tech house groove.
That's lovely, isn't it? It's good. It's good. No, it is. It's really, really
loves
good.
a groover.
Yeah, and it is. That's those Rudolph C ones are absolute groovers. You know, there's loads of people, especially Australians like Rudolph C, that are making music like that at the minute, which is, you know, tongue in cheek sort of tech house, but also
it's kind of almost like
bringing in
proggy stuff as well.
Which all these names are like synonymous with, like, you know, don't talk about, like, don't mention the word tech house, like, but now it's like
a taboo word.
It is. Yeah. So it's like prog house and trance, but then
when you put them all together,
if you're like mixing it or like molding it together the way that they do, it's so like danceable in a club. It's fantastic. Like perfect.
Yeah. That's the point. Is
it's all about the
isn't it? Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. We always have discussions about tech house. What's tech house?
But like I watched the episode with you and McVicker, and what I think is tech house is different from what he thinks it is. It's all like relative to the stuff that you've been brought up listening to.
It's such a generic term.
Of course.
And what we would all call tech house is nothing like the actual genre that was called tech house when it actually came out originally. Like it's a messed up one. You can try and box it up.
It's got so many different ways it can branch. It's just a new term for house music, essentially.
House. But if it's good and we like it, we'll put it out.
We've done everything from like jungle, drum and bass, ambient, electro, just whatever.
This is quite
varied
routes.
When did you start noticing, like, you know, after you started properly getting the releases out, that you started noticing that, you know, we're getting a lot of traction here on?
I think
probably when that
we had a couple of good runs. I think there was like a few. There was points where there was like 3 or 4 successful releases in a row. Like they did the No Moon one, the Voiron one, then shortly after that, the Borough Connection one, Derek Carr, they all came in as sort of like fairly quick succession, and all of them did really well. And then we had another period after that where it was like the Doll record, the Fabio Manesi one, the Reptint record, and they all did in their own right. So they're all different genres again, but they all did really well. And they were the 2 peaks that you really seen that was like a big peak in popularity, and then again after that, it was like when you got a good solid run of like 6 months with a good few releases.
And that coincides with getting bookings, so we know that it's selling well because people like will book us, basically. And that was just kind of, that's been over the past few years just like a steady trajectory of us like having more and more bookings each year.
Just because the sort of the names out there, and it's the good thing about it, it's a very unique name. Do you know?
Yes.
Yeah. The thing is, like, we've like toyed with doing stuff under like another alias and stuff, and the most difficult part is like naming something.
Like, something you could go over and over and over.
You could name it anything though, and it wouldn't matter. You could name it like Derek ate a carrot once. I wouldn't like.
That's quite a name, actually.
And you could be headlining Dead Man Tell in like 18 months. It really doesn't matter. But like as an artist or like as someone in the industry, you're like, oh, the name has to be perfect. But
what is a perfect name?
Yeah, exactly. for us, it was literally.
If you create a brand behind it, then you know it will. You know, it will resonate with people.
And the thing is, with making music, because that's what we were talking about. We've been talking for weeks about what do we call ourselves, because we want to start producing music, but I know we do everything else under the Craigie Knowes banner. Everything's like comes under the same name, but that's one thing that I don't personally feel comfortable with releasing music under that name because
the labels.
One, I'm not a producer. Like I don't claim to be an incredible producer. I want to do something out with it that just I can enjoy and not have that weight on my shoulders. That like, am I making music that's technically good enough to do it on that level, or am I just undermining all the fantastic artists that we have on the label by like using the name to like release stuff that might not be that great? It's just too much baggage.
There's too much pressure to put on ourselves as well,
and baggage to put on
especially
something.
when the label's got different, so many different genres. If you come out and make, say, a house track, or whatever, then it kind of undermines the label in a sense.
Yeah.
But you're right in terms of I consider I knew tracks I made like a couple of years ago when I was experimenting weren't good enough. I just knew it because so it's you've got to be at a level that you feel comfortable getting stuff out there.
Yeah, so you're standing up in the room and you're dancing away the track. That's it.
Well, you have to go through that stage though. It's the same with like going back to like learning to mix. Like you listen back to your old mixes that you record and you're like, that's rubbish. But it has to be because no one turns on a set of turntables and they can chop like beat match perfectly. It's just not
something you have to learn.
It's not a thing. It's just like
DJ.
It's like anything else. You need to. It wouldn't be enjoyable if it was easy to do.
Unless you're the wizard, I'm pretty sure he was born just to do that alone.
And I mean, learning to DJ. My first proper gig was actually in the Ice Factory when I know they just won the League Cup, but they won the Scottish Cup in 2014, 15.
Yeah. I think they mention it now and again, don't they?
Sometimes.
Yeah. And then I was playing in the, I started in the loft in Perth.
Yeah.
Just like learning to DJ. I'd only played on a Wednesday night as a trial shift. And
gay night.
Yeah, the gay night. And basically they said, oh, we're going to open the Ice Factory for the Scottish Cup final after party.
Yep.
And
didn't the Saints players turn up?
Yeah, and they
yeah.
So they said to me, it's like, you're warming up the main room. It's 90s anthems, and I'm like fucking 18. I'm like fucking hell, and I go up to my mum's watching TV, and I run upstairs. I'm like, yeah, no way, I'm playing the opening the Ice Factory for this Saints thing. She's like, what, you're not going? I'm like, why? We've got a wedding. And I'm like, you can't be fucking serious. I said, this is one of my biggest opportunities.
It's my biggest gig, man.
Biggest gig. And
Mom, please.
She's going fucking mental. I said, look, I'll go to the wedding, but it was in Glasgow, the wedding. And I said, I'll have to leave early. It was a family wedding, so I literally went in my kilt, was there for like half an hour, went to the disabled toilet, chucked my kilt off, got in the car, bolted up here.
Saints kit on.
Yeah.
Saints socks on.
Scarf on.
Got here, and obviously I was doing the main room up there, and I had at this point, because I was on virtual DJ and a controller.
Yep.
Still
set
is.
everything up, and I was waiting for like the open the doors, and the thing came up, said do an update, and I accidentally pressed it. And it completely this was like 5 minutes before it was opening, and honestly, this was one of the worst moments of my life. I was like shiting myself, and I was going on my laptop and I was like, how am I going to sort this? And eventually I found like an older version that was still on my computer.
Yeah.
And I managed to do it, and literally 1 minute before, and managed to get it going again. And I remember they opened the doors, just running in, do you know what I mean? And 90s anthems and fucking hell. That was a moment for me, like as a DJ, knowing that, right, I want to do this.
Yeah, I was there. That was a really good night.
I can tell you a 90s anthem mishap as well. I was playing in Sankey's in Manchester in the bar, and I was like one of my first gigs outside of Scotland. It's me and my friend, one of the guys that I live with in Ibiza, and we were playing in Sankey's in the bar, and we got pretty steaming after it. And the guy who run the club, or the manager, I don't really know who he was like, Grandmaster Flash is pulled out, and you're the only DJs that are left here in the club. You're going to have to fill in for Grandmaster Flash in the main room.
Wait, what?
And he was doing a 90s house set, and you now have to play a 90s. And I was like, I don't think I've got the music for this, man. I was like, I think I was like 19 years old. He was like, you've got no option. You're just doing it. And there was people who had travelled from Perth to Manchester.
Yeah, to see Grandmaster
Flash.
They turned up and he was in the fucking booth.
It's me first.
Yeah. Like, what's Max doing there?
What's Max doing? I was like, so I had to watch it. They booked hotels and travelled down to England to go see Grandmaster Flash, and he got to watch me
Turned up and it was
steaming as well.
Max in the malt house.
Yeah. I was so drunk I played the same song into the same song. It was dreadful. It was a mess.
Extended
the whole
mix.
thing was rubbish. It was rubbish.
Was it? Fuck.
Like 600 people in Sankey's.
That's mental. Like, yeah, I was the same. I was literally the whole week going through all these like playlists of like 90s anthems, and I always say to myself, I wish I could go back in time and play that gig, knowing what
your
knowing
knowledge now.
Yeah. Like,
hindsight's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Yeah.
But no, that was mental. But you know, in terms of some of the, you know, when did the bookings start coming? Like did you get an agent?
Yeah, so we got signed to, what were they called to begin with? Coda. They're called Coda.
Yeah, I know.
So they're massive. So we were by far the smallest act that they had on, because I think they've got
get in contact with you then?
Well, we'd spoken to a couple of people who had agents.
Because we were getting bookings at that point, and we were kind of in this limbo where it was like...
Were they just coming direct to you then?
Yeah.
So we were coming to us, and we didn't know... We didn't have contracts. We didn't have like a way of dealing with them. I hate talking about money to people. It's just like rubbish.
Yeah.
So we kind of went to a couple of the agents that we knew and were like, can you pick this up? And they had like an intern sort of junior guy who was an assistant, and he had been helping one of the actual agents with like his roster that he had. But then he got a couple of small acts to take on. It was just like right timing thing, and he was like, well, this guy's an assistant, he'll take you on. And he came to that thing in Amsterdam with us, you know.
Yeah, he came to Amsterdam, so he had two or three of his mates with us. So we were like, oh, we'll go out for some food. And he was that stoned, he like never spoke the whole like we all got like 2 courses.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, we're full. And then he was like that.
He was like the first time we met him, he just sat there in silence at the table. Like,
he was just like, I was like, are you alright, man? And he was just like, sitting at the table, and we went to this really weird, like, it was like an Argentinian steakhouse.
Yeah, it had like props and stuff on the wall.
There was like a cow wearing a McDonald's t-shirt.
Was this in Amsterdam?
Yeah. And then that was when we were playing like Red Light Radio Operator and
so that kind of contradicts what we said earlier, because we thought, in my memory, the agent thing happened after that, but it must have happened just before that. So it must have been we had all these gigs coming up, and then they helped us organise it.
What were some of those early gigs like then?
Good. We had where did we go?
Forfar.
Oh my god! So this is the this is the worst gig we've ever played, but it was really funny. So our friend Ronnie had a mate who lived in Forfar who was like into like house and techno. So he was like, I'm going to put on a night. This is way before we got an agent. So this is before we even started Craigie Knowes. And so one of my friends borrowed his mum's Ford Galaxy.
It was like a 7-seater.
And
borrowed or just...
Well, like he ended up having it. Yeah. And so we went up to Forfar, and we were standing outside waiting to get into the club, and like it's like 6 people turned up in like happy hardcore gear, like
neon flares.
Yeah, neon flares, like furry boots, glow sticks and stuff.
It was honestly, you should have seen this place we were playing as well. It was like the roughest.
And the night was called Back to Basics, so he just nicked the name from Ralph Lawson's night.
Like quite back to back.
Yeah,
the most famous house night in the country, and they're like, I've got a name for us guys. Back to Basics.
Nobody's ever done it. It's unique.
Yeah. And
they were like embarrassed to share the poster. Well, the poster was dreadful as well, but I was like, I can't tell people I'm playing this night on Back to Basics. People are like, well done.
And so we were playing, and like 3 folk like pushed past us in the booth. They were like, I want to charge my fucking phone.
Just like walking into the booth.
I was sorry. And then a guy came up to us and was like, can you play something with words in it? Because you're ruining my daughter's 18th.
Yeah, grabbed his daughter by like the scruff of the neck and was like, you're ruining my daughter's 18th.
And then like 20 minutes later, I looked out onto the dance floor and I was like, is that guy and his daughter? And they were like pulling each other. And I was like, are you sure that? I was like, are you sure that's like that's his daughter, right? And Sam was like, yeah, I think it is. And he was like, proper like going at it.
Was this Forfar?
Forfar. So I was like, fair enough. And then I think what was we didn't have anything with words in it. Basically, the only thing we had was a local dice definition. People in Forfar like that track apparently, so we played that.
It was like the only thing that went down well.
And then we got in the Ford Galaxy and ended up coming back to Perth, and I was basically. And
like fold down trays like an airplane. I remember. Oh god.
And then we got back to Perth, and then we're like, right, Ronnie, like, how much are we getting paid? I think we got like 15 quid each or something. I was just like,
pay for the petrol.
I was just, and so he was like, here's your 15 quid, and then you're due me like 12 each for petrol. We're like, there you go.
So we invoice you? Or?
Yeah. So then I was like, you're never
£3.
dealing with, like, we're never doing that for you again.
And it was just like this pipe dream of having an agent after that. I was like, we can't do this. We cannot do this anymore.
But yeah, no, so the first gigs once we got an agent were like, was it like Barcelona?
Yeah.
Played for like 5.
But different from
Barcelona. That should be the name if we ever do a book.
Yeah,
Forfar
like memoirs,
Barcelona.
Forfar to Barcelona.
Craigie Knowes story.
Yeah, we ended up playing a club called Lout, which
That
really
was
cool.
some club, man. Like the way they had, it was fairly new. The way they had built it, the guys who ran it were fantastic. Like the way they had like built the club and set the sound system up.
On the dance floor, there's no split between the dance floor and the bar, but
you can see the bar from it's one long room, and you can see the bar from where the booth is. But you step like 2 steps off the dance floor, the way the room's shaped, and the acoustics,
sound cuts off.
You can like speak at the bar, but the music when you step on the dance floor is so loud.
That's
And
mental.
like the way it
really
was
cool.
it was incredible. When they were doing the sound check, we were like, what on earth, man, this place is like
I
incredible.
don't think it's on, mate.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And they booked us for 5 hours to like play for the entire night. So we played like a set, like an ambient set for the first 2 hours. There was people like coming and going, and then it like picked it up over the night to like up until the very end.
And was
The
that,
Tech House.
what was that?
Up to
Was that
the
Saturday
Tech House
or
band.
what was it?
Yeah, it was a Saturday. Because I think we flew in. We ended up staying 2 nights just so we could like go around Barcelona. And we went to Subwax in Barcelona.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we went there.
Yeah.
And just went about and saw everything, and that was probably one of the first ones. And then since then we've been to like Leipzig, Berlin a few times.
We've been well, it's hard to just list it off the top of your head.
Geneva was really
fantastic.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool city, like.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Is there much of a scene in Geneva?
Well, way more than you'd think. It was not like my perception of what Geneva is not what Geneva actually is. It's like it's beautiful and it's scenic, and obviously does have all the banks and everything there.
Yeah.
Like it has all that, and Lake Geneva.
That's what I've got my head.
Well, Geneva's there, but then you cross a couple streets, and then it's like it's an entire city of like a culturally dynamic city. It was totally, obviously that's pretty, that's me basing it upon what we've seen, the snapshot of what we've seen. But what we've seen was a total side of Geneva that in my head I wouldn't have expected to be there. And there was this whole sort of like squatters thing that they told us the history of all the way the city used to work and how, all these buildings had been like taken over by people, and then it was like an ongoing legal thing over time to like formalize it and make it into an actual club, and then it's like an arts and creative space. It was incredible.
I mean,
really
you
good.
guys, when you first got some of those abroad bookings, were you guys proper buzzing?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just like sitting in the airport, just like totally jazzed.
Mental,
and like,
eh?
yeah,
Just like, what the hell?
what
The
we're doing.
Weatherspoon's pint.
Yeah. And then kind of just kept like snowballing, and we ended up getting more and more gigs.
We did start to take it for granted in a way. Well, obviously it's easy to say now with the current climate, but it got to a point where we were like every other weekend we were traveling somewhere together, and it was like fantastic. Like when do you get to do that? Like get paid to go and do the thing you love with like your best mate. It was a crazy thing to do, and it got like kind of normal. We were like away at least once a month or sometimes twice a month. And
there was a stage in, I think it was 2019.
It was like every weekend.
Yeah, so it was like 12 weekends in a row we were away.
It was
and
crazy.
it was just completely ruined by the end of it, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
What's your, I mean, a trip away? I mean, I know. For instance, me and Paddy got booked to go abroad tomorrow. We'd be going big. We'd be going big. We'd be drinking. We'd be partying.
Yeah.
Is that what you guys do?
Mitch isn't a big drinker.
Nah, I'm not like.
You drink more now, I would say, than you ever have. But historically, I drink a lot. he doesn't drink
and
nearly
that's
at all.
like I used to get like smashed when I was younger, and then I kind of like tailed off. But for us, it's kind of like, we're kind of a bit more sensible now. We've like made mistakes, traveling away before, and it's probably just something that, like, now if we're like going away, we'd like actually like to go and see the city and go and visit record shops and go and get like some
all
food.
the touristy stuff.
Well, some food that you wouldn't like be able to, because like we're both big into food, so it'd be like something that we wouldn't be able to get here. So we.
It's usually nicer to like see the record shops and see like maybe go to a nice restaurant and see, you know, what the city has to offer instead of just seeing what the inside of the local hospital looks like.
Local ambulance.
Like the paramedics in Belfast are so friendly, but like I don't want to spend all my weekend with them.
I couldn't tell you how they are. I heard they're fantastic.
But like for instance, as well, if we're playing abroad, like our set times will be totally different. So here it's like till 3 a.m, whereas if we're playing in like Renat in Berlin, sometimes we wouldn't be playing until like 6 or 7 a.m. So like you can go to sleep, or like go out for dinner, and then like go to sleep, get up, have breakfast, and then go and play. Whereas I
find that
an alien environment.
But then we have made the mistake of
staying on it,
just not even booking a hotel, just to like, so we'll be like, let's have like, we'll get more like to save the promoter money or whatever. Not that we're expensive, but we're aware that there's 2 of us. So what we'll say is, like, not even have one. So like, just like I went and
nice guys, aren't we?
Yeah, I think he was in we double booked, so he was in Leipzig and I was in Berlin. And
we kind of mucked it up, didn't we?
Yeah, so I flew to Berlin. We went out for dinner with everyone that was playing the night. And then I went to the club, waited for like 4 hours to play. Played from like 5 a.m. till 9 a.m, and then just went straight back to the airport. So I hadn't like slept, and that's like, I wouldn't recommend that to anyone because I was working on Monday as well. So I got back at like 6 o'clock on Sunday night, just like completely ruined. And it doesn't really help that I'm used to having Max there with me as well. So you like, obviously, if you're like feeling rough or feeling rubbish, if you've got someone to like bounce off of, that's why I feel like I take my hat off to like anyone who does it like on their own. Because it's like,
that was sort of like that was sort of a affirming of the thing that we have in terms of the dynamic of not just DJing together, but
we hang together.
Yeah.
And like, I know it sounds a bit like, but honestly, I wouldn't do it if I wasn't doing it with Mitch. I genuinely wouldn't.
As you said, it's like being with your best mate and you're
I did that gig in Leipzig, and it was good. You know, it was good. But on the flight home, I said to myself, I wouldn't do this alone.
And
like,
it's rough because you're going in from such like an intense atmosphere with so many people, and within half an hour you're in a silent hotel room on your own,
like staring at the roof.
That's like music in your ears.
I think people underestimate that physical, like,
it's tough.
I think I remember when I booked Mulgrave for the Odyssey first birthday for Liquid Rooms, and that was, you know, Thursday night we had over 1,000 people. And that's when he was on that sort of meteoric rise.
As you say, the trajectory going up.
He had actually, because I was noticing he was, you know, starting to make waves in the scene. So he was playing the Subby. So I went through to Subby to see him, and I was like, you know, class. Booked him like in a year in advance. Like, as I was planning to do it as kind of a smaller show at Cab Vol. So booked him a year in advance at like 1,500 quid or something. And because I booked it a year in advance, like over that whole summer,
it just got bigger and bigger.
He just went through the roof. So I was like, right, I'll move the show to Liquid Rooms, and do it as the first birthday one. And, you know, so
it was he,
but we, you know, Jordan, who we know quite well, that, you know, that's when one of the big club shows he played on his, you know, route to where he is now. And that was one of the things he said, like, when I actually, because we went pretty hard with him, didn't we? And he was playing Leeds the next day or something in the train, and he hadn't slept.
He was like, come with us.
He's like, come. He's like playing all night. He says, we're all back at my flat. He's like, oh, come down and play with me in Leeds. He says, I said, "Oh, a promoter like won't want me playing." He says, "No, I'm not going to play if you don't play." I said, "I'll book your train ticket now." And it was like, I don't know what.
Must be like 8 in the morning.
8 in the morning, and I was so close to going. I wish I did, but I just knew I'd get to like Carlisle or something. I'd be like,
absolutely.
or anything.
We did the same thing one night. It was me and one of my friends, Chris Adley. He was through when I lived in Glasgow. That first year that I lived there, he came through with me, and we had partied all night. And I was playing in Belfast the next day. And during the time, like during that night when we were drunk, you booked a flight and was like, oh, I'm coming. And it got to the morning, and we were like, yeah, we'll just stay up. We'll go for a pint in the airport, and it'll be fine. And then he was sitting on the couch going, I'm going to come, and I was like, don't you dare.
Yeah.
I was like, don't you dare. After you've convinced me to party on all night, and now I've got to go to another country, and you're just going to stay here and go to sleep. I was like, there's no way that's happening.
You're coming image of what happened.
You are coming whether you like it or not, and he did come, and he slept on the plane the whole way there, and we got to the hotel, and he's like, I'm just going to go to bed. Just went to sleep for a night in Belfast, and we
decent night's sleep.
Yeah.
Back we go.
Well, then I went back and played the gig, finished the show, went to sleep as well, and just came home. So you literally just came to Belfast to sleep.
But when I went to book Mulgrab again after that, the management said after last time all his shows have got a tour manager.
Oh, really?
So I think maybe we were
a
responsible
bit
for
too
that.
hard.
Yeah. Do you have to pay for the tour manager's flight and stuff as well? Then,
so it was one of the annoying things we had. Being a promoter, probably know as well, but some of them come on their own. For instance, the first guy I had, Paddy came just fired up on the train from Newcastle, played, that was it, and he's massive. And then you get people that you shouldn't have a tour manager, and it's an extra flight, it's
hotel room.
Yeah.
Disclosure had bouncers when we booked them.
There's people in your ear like
two bouncers came in the booth and were like heavies in the booth for them. I was like, "What? You're in sub club. I think you're going to be okay."
And
like,
it's just,
you don't need the heavies in there.
It's usually these prima donnas, a lot of them, and they're in your ear like that, about stupid stuff, and
I want a sauna.
Yeah.
Or
I play without
We played with them.
I play without shoes and socks on, so I need a rug for my feet.
Yeah, that's one of our mates, Simon Bays.
Yeah. Well, he asked we played with him up in Aberdeen, and he asked for a rug. Because like bass players, when they play guitar, they like to play with their shoes off on a rug.
Like actual people who have like musical talent.
Whereas he was like DJing, playing other people's records, and he was like, I want to be in barefoot. So like the guys that ran the night just got this. They probably picked out a skip.
We got a rug in for you.
Yeah, or like out a skip. So I just saw us wee trotters,
cheesy toes
on this rug, and I was like, what is like? I know we care about music, and you have to give the best version of yourself, when you're playing, and we put in the time and look for records, but when it gets to he would slide tackle me if I started taking my undoing my shoes and going barefoot to mix.
There's chin stroking, then there's having a rug for you to stand on
just for your toes.
Yeah.
You've really
what's on your guys' riders then?
I was it used to be a bottle of gin and
and a rug
and a crate of beers, but that's been changed.
Then obviously you've heard, during this and earlier today, you've heard about a few mishaps. So we toned it down. We just have beers now because we're grown up and sensible now, and people are actually paying to be entertained, not paying for me to be an idiot. So,
I see these ridiculous riders. Some of the guests, and the first couple parties you do as a young promoter, you make sure you got everything. You're running about the town.
Got all the blue smarties.
And then I realised that
no one cares. Yeah.
You'd realise spend £200 on a rider, and they come and they wouldn't fucking drink it. So when we used to pick them up,
we're like, what do you want?
What do you want? In the car, they say what they want, we'll get it.
Yeah. No, that's what we did.
That's the way I did it from then on, and it worked. It worked fine, didn't it?
Yeah.
But especially when you're paying high fees for DJs.
Yeah, don't be spending £300 on a fucking bottle.
The margins are so tight, especially when I was doing nights at Cavall. It's a limited club, really, about 600, 700 capacity.
At a push.
And if you're paying $3,000 for a guest, which we were doing a lot of the time, and the margins aren't big at all. So 200 quid, you know, does make a difference.
Yep.
But obviously you've got a boiler room under your belt as well. Tell us about how that sort of came about and how far.
Well, it was a girl who works for Boiler Room booked us
before, so we played a gig. Yeah.
What was it called?
It was Bubble Chamber. And
no, what?
Well, that wasn't even the night.
Oh, I think it was 2 nights. It was like Bubble Chamber, and so the girl, Jules, who DJs under, is it me now?
Yes.
Yeah, she's a really good DJ as well, and then her friend, Rosie or Rosa, plays under Chiara Scuro. They're like a girl duo. They've played like Dimensions and stuff.
Really good.
Yeah, they're really good as well. They both ran a night together, so they booked us, and we ended up playing for them and like got on really well with them. And Jules works a boiler room, so she was like, "I'm like, it'd be really good if you could do a boiler room." And then we kind of snowballed into like
a whole weekend.
Let's just do like a Craigie Knowes like themed
like
boiler room.
Yeah. So there was like us, and then we got the other guys that played. Eloise came, Repton played, No Moon played, Carfinlow did a
So how did you decide who was playing? Did you get the final decision?
Yeah, so they asked us who to put together, and I was trying to think like who captures like the label. Like Eloise did the only album, she's obviously in a second one since then.
It's just Australian, isn't she?
Yeah, she lives in Berlin. Well, she lives in Berlin, I think now.
Yeah, no, she does. So there was like I knew that she had to be on it because it was just kind of that was where we were at the moment, and it just made sense. And then obviously the Repton record had just come out or was coming out. No, it had just come out, and he had like a live set that he wanted to do. Carfinlow was like the first artist we ever released with, and No Moon was an artist who we've worked with like so many times. It just made sense for Fred to be there as well. And all of them were obviously really excited. It made sense because none of them had done a boiler room before as well. So it was like all of our first time, all at the same time in the London studio, like the original boiler room thing. Like it was the perfect.
I loved how they got the Scottish.
It was Cunter, Callum Hunter's like our friend.
There's some story to go with this as well. Right? So Cunter, I was out in. He was out in America for like a month,
living like a cowboy.
He was living in the Wild West, right? I don't know where he was, right? And he had a cowboy hat on for like a month on his Instagram stories, and he had been speaking in an American accent like on his Instagram stories for a joke for so long that he was like stuck in character.
And he couldn't stop speaking like that.
I was speaking on the phone, he was like, "Howdy." I just couldn't like he couldn't break character. He had like broken himself by being there for so long. And when Boiler Room said to me like, "Do you have somebody that can do like the MC for the night?" Master of Ceremonies looked after the whole thing. And they're like, "Do they just need somebody that's got character? Like, have you got somebody Scottish, like Glaswegian, somebody that can?" And I was like, "Do I know someone?" And I went,
"Can't
I think I might have the guy for you." So I messaged him and I said, "Can you be? I know you're in America, but can you be in London on whatever the date was?" And he was like, "Man, I'm in America. I don't know if I can get back for that. Like, I would love to do it. It's like I would love to do it. It's just his thing. Like in a nutshell, that's his sort of thing." And then he messaged me or phoned me the next day and he was like, "You will not believe this. I've just checked my flights and I actually fly into London that day. Like I arrived back from being away from London.
So it was meant to be."
I was just like, this is it. It's the stars have aligned. Get him in. And obviously he's been the talking point for everyone about that whole thing. Like since, because he was just he was as drunk as he sounded. Like that
was legit.
Yeah, it was not put on.
Did you get like a hotel in that?
Yeah, well, we ended up having a night at
Fold
the next night. So like that was a club that we'd like since it had opened. We loved to play there, and we ended up doing a Craigie Knowes night there as well. And Jensen Interceptor played as well.
Back-to-back with Repton to like close Fold, which is like this unbelievable club, like absolutely incredible.
And the
life affirming stuff.
And obviously going up to the preparing for the gig.
Did you have an idea of what you were going to do?
What was going through your mind?
Like, for Boiler Room, we wanted to do like some Craigie Knowes stuff and then some stuff that we'd upbeat party tunes.
Just wanted to play party music, and
it kind of swayed into more like, I know we're saying we're not an electro like label, but it's swayed more like to like off kilter breakbeat stuff. Whereas ordinarily in a club we would play like a bit of that, but it'd usually be a bit more like pumping stuff.
But it was like that, some of it. And then the tune we opened with was a track that I would always like. I remember the first time I heard it, and I remember like having this vision of like I remember driving around listening to that tune like way back, and I was like, if I ever do a boiler room set, that would be the tune I would play at the start to open it, and I got to do it. So that was something that was like really special as well, because I always wanted to. If I got it, that's what I wanted to do, and did it, and it was like.
And how did you find it during it?
It was good. The whole night was amazing.
It was amazing. I was flaky before it. Like, I've never get nervous before a gig, but I just don't know. It's because they give you a disclaimer with Boiler Room. They say, like, no matter what happens, this is going up.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like that sort of thing. Like, I've never really messed a gig up. Well, I've messed a few up. But not like...
We all have.
Yeah. But not like... I knew I wasn't going to mess it up, but it's that thing of knowing that it's like... I don't know, like immortalised like that. You got this like finality on it.
What if something happens?
This is happening, whether you like it or not. It's going up, and it was kind of like shook before. I had like 6 beers like sitting there, and I was just feeling a wee bit like. And then as soon as we played the first mix or two, I was just like enjoyed it, and the whole place was jumping. It was
the first couple of ones were like a bit nerve-wracking, but we never had any beasts or anything like that. It was
and an hour is an awful time to play.
Yeah, because it usually takes like an hour to get into
the floor.
Yeah, dreadful.
But like I started trying to play records, and then I was like, it's so like.
Did you scratch that off during it?
Like to begin with, I think I played 1 or 2 records to begin with. And then I was like, I'm just going to play like...
Just waiting for something to knock
because I was just waiting for something to knock it.
Because it was like jumping in there as well. It was proper like...
Yeah, it was stuffed full.
Where about in London was it?
Is it? No, it's not.
I don't actually know where the office is. I didn't know London well at all.
Was it just like a warehouse kind of...
Yeah, kind of. And then they've got like a big balcony outside, which is really cool.
Smoking terrace.
They've done some boiler rooms outside in the summer. Well, it was summer when we did it, but they decided to do it inside. And they'd had all the lighting done the same as the poster for the boiler room, which was cool. Okay. But it was nice having, like, we had loads of friends that had came down with us, and there was people who'd released on the label that weren't playing that were there. Like Baltra was there, and that record
that was a special thing that
he did for us. He like that track got over 1 million plays on YouTube. Fade Away.
It got like 5 million in the end.
Yeah,
before it
got taken down, and that was like
it gets like honestly, it's on streaming platforms and stuff. It gets like hundreds of thousands of plays a month. I actually caught up with him recently about returning the rights to him, so to give him back the music just the other day. About I've had it for 5 years. We've split the royalties on it for then, but we had a chat the other day about returning it to him and giving it because it was that was kind of one of the tunes that like made the label as well.
Because it was that whole
what's
lo-fi
track?
Baltra Fade Away, and it was like the whole like lo-fi house thing. Like that was probably one of the tracks that kind of made that sound.
For better or worse,
people
people hate that stuff, but at the end of the day, it was an era and it happened.
But at that point in time, it was quite
it's obviously
groundbreaking.
been relevant.
It was,
and it's a good track. Like people can slag it all they want.
I love that track. No, I love that track.
So like he was there. Rory Hammer was there. There was just like
my
friends.
stepbrother was there. Like one of my good friends who's not really into dance music anymore, that lives in London. He was there. Like, my girlfriend was there. Like, yeah, it was just like
a buzz.
It was just like it was like a big group of people
and
who we'd met and spoke to throughout like this whole journey.
And the day, like the sun was splitting the pavement. It was such a beautiful day. The sun was out, and they've got like a terrace outside of it. And see, like the first hour after it opened, like one person turned up because it was like an RSVP thing, and you put your name down, and then they say, "Okay, you're in. You can come." But that's only a finite number of people, and I was like, "Well, you've given X amount of people the ticket to come of all the people that applied to come.
Yeah.
What if like half those people don't come and they think this thing's dead?" And like for the first hour, I was like, Imagine we've got to do a boiler room and,
like
no one has turned up.
Some boiler rooms and there's like 4 people there.
I was like, is this happening? Like, are we actually going to have to do a boiler room and no one cares and no one wants to come?
That disclaimer.
I was just like, oh my god, like this is going to be so embarrassing. Like we've told those people doing boiler room and there's no one's going to be here. And then all of a sudden it was like bang, and just the queue like down the street, the thing was absolutely packed. Like you couldn't move in that room.
Yeah,
I was just like, that was it. I was like, oh, so as soon as the room filled up and we stepped in, I was like,
that's the worst feeling as a promoter, and you know, a DJ as well. I mean, a DJ is not as bad, but as a promoter, you know, I used to sometimes eat, you know, when it was not a sold out night or just a typical night, you go away to the pub and just sitting
Start
there.
a couple of jars of yourself.
Just turn around the corner and just hope there's a queue.
Yeah, I've been
sometimes
there.
there was, sometimes there wasn't.
Well, then you feel bad for if you're a DJ as well and it's not that busy, and it happens to everyone. It doesn't matter who you are.
I felt bad when I booked you guys because it was pish. It was.
We'll just have to do it again sometime. But I think
he's not taking that risk again. He lost enough money on the first one.
But yeah, it happens to everyone, man. There's you can have the best club and the best night, best booking in the world. It's like in Glasgow, we had, if you book someone really amazing, then the club 2 streets down could have Ben UFO.
Yeah.
So it's gonna that's gonna sell out, and you're not gonna have anyone, even though you've got someone really good.
I remember there was a weekend in Edinburgh. I always remember where we had a night. We had a big night on the Thursday. I can't remember who we had, but it was a pretty big guest. On the Friday there was Man of the Tough playing, and someone else. On the Saturday there was Move the Optimo.
Oh shit! Yeah, I remember that.
There was a cup. There was another. Was it Lemfaki as well playing?
Lemfaki, yeah.
All
on
in
the
the one
Saturday.
weekend. That's never and the whole every promoter that weekend took a massive hit.
Yeah.
And it was just why can't we? A lot of you always hear why can't promoters work together?
Yeah.
But it's not really a reality.
It's a business as well. At the end of the day as well.
I mean, with rivalry as a promoter, you kind of I think there's been a slight. What I feel has been a slight shift in the past couple of years, where certainly in our bit, people are starting to work
Open
together.
up to each other.
Yes, yeah.
But there is always you always want your night to be the best, don't you?
Yeah.
I think that comes with age as well, because when you're when you're younger, you're just fuck it, let's
Screw
just do
everyone
what
else,
let's do us. But I think the older you get and you realise that it is actually quite a small community, you'd all end up being friends anyway.
Yeah, you've all got the same end game, so you may as well work together.
Yeah.
So I suppose with it's something that we've seen a slight shift in, but at the end of the day, there's always it's people's livelihoods as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so after the boiler, what was kind of the reaction? Were you pleased with the reaction you got from it? How did it benefit the label?
They turned the comments off. So I don't know if that was just loads of people from Perth just putting in mad shit. Yeah, so they turned it. There was I think they had the live chat. No, they turned the live chat off for that one, but then there's comments on YouTube, and there was an Instagram thing, and you'll know Pioneer mixers redline all the time, and the way
they literally need to have them sitting at
I know
nearly off on the game to And the thing is, the sound system was put in by who was installation by?
It was Void.
It was Void,
So,
and they had
a guy from Void who came
1
and
foot away
set
from
it
us,
up.
being turn it up, whatever, And there's obviously everyone on YouTube is
red line.
It's a professional. How are these guys getting a gig and they're redlining it?
I noticed that, yeah.
What, man? Shut up.
I think we left one comment being you okay, hun? And then after that I was just I'm not even going to read them, but the feedback was really good, and I think it was just it was quite funny for people from Perth, because dance music's so universal now. They were I know those guys. So it's just,
they even threw in a little Easter egg into it as well.
Oh yeah. So
at the start, if you listen very carefully to the start of Boiler Room, there's a very funny video of a boy from Perth at a party saying something very funny, and we always found that video hilarious. And he comes to all of our gigs, and he's always been really supportive of us. So
do you know Dylan Stewart?
Yeah.
So
listen closely.
It's a clip of him at an afters, and he's I'll not say what he says, but it's pretty funny.
He says something extremely funny. But that's edited into the start of the introduction of the Boiler Room, and you can hear it.
So we put an
effects
echo on it.
Stuff on it.
So at the start, he was obviously sitting in his room in Perth watching it.
And one of the comments before it got turned off was him saying "fuck's sake," the first comment.
Fuck's sake, all comments disabled.
But nah, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it wasn't us taking the mick out. It was more just he's and him and all the other people from Perth. There's obviously been some people that have given us stick or whatever for what we've done, and that's kind of the way it is. But people like him and all the other people in Perth have always been so supportive. Have always got behind what we've tried to do. When we've got gigs, they always come. So
yeah, they're
followed us around.
It was kind of just something a bit funny to reciprocate a bit of fun of a bit of home. So that's the biggest gig we've ever done. Whether you like it or not, it was. And to weave something in about our hometown back into it was just something fun.
So did it benefit the label then?
100%.
Yeah.
We definitely got I mean, last year was it was going to be the busiest year we had.
We were doing amazing stuff
of
last year, and it's a shame that it didn't happen. We might be going to Australia, we might be going to America, and like all that got taken away from us. But you know, it's what it is. We'll hopefully get to a point where we can do it again, and it kind of gives you a bit of an urge again to pick the label back up, because we've been slow this year, and we're trying to be working out what we want to do and how we want to position the label, how we want to operate the label, what we want to do with nights. But I think now I want to go back to doing what we were doing, releasing records frequently, doing and releasing music that we want to release, whatever that is, and just having momentum again and getting back to that point. I slowed it down for the sake of slowing it down in terms of the releasing. But what I look back now, I was sitting listening to some mixes that we did last night, and you know, it kind of hit home that I want to be in a position again where we have momentum.
Yeah.
And to do that, I know what I need to do because I've done it before.
Yeah.
Mitch knows what he needs to do from his side.
Yeah.
And if we do that together, hopefully we just get back to doing what we were doing before, travelling, playing gigs, doing shows, and having some fun.
Lineups as well, eh?
Yeah, that's something we've always struggled with. That's something we have struggled with. We don't get many festival bookings.
No, we played a what is it, like a couple. There was one in London that we've played.
Yeah.
We played a couple of times, and then we headlined Belladrum.
That was fantastic.
Oh, Belladrum's unreal.
We
closed it on the, what was the Saturday night?
Was that in the Mother's Room?
Yeah. It's so good.
We closed it on the Saturday night, and it was like, oh god, there must have been like 600-700 kids in there, like
It's mad. Was it? I played there as well. It was like half a plane.
Yeah.
You're like looking out the window of the cockpit, man. It was like, what did we close with Prodigy?
Yeah. We played Prodigy as the last
I can't remember what Prodigy track it was.
What year was that?
That might have been the same year. You might have been there.
Maybe it was like I think it was like Primal Scream that headlined. Maybe
it was that. Yeah, it was that weekend.
Yeah. And it was funny because we seen a video of somebody closing it with the same tune or something.
Yeah, the next year someone who like closed
somebody
it
else got booked to play that slot and closed it with the same tune. What the fuck?
You think like you'd be on more festival lineups because there's a lot of more guests on.
Yeah, well,
I think when people listen to the label, you need party music, and I don't know if that's synonymous with the label because we lose kind of weird stuff
as well. A lot of the time, we're not that visible on our Instagram and stuff like that, so we're not massively like
active on it.
Like neither of us want to I don't want to put my face on Instagram because no one wants to look like. Do you know what I mean? Like I would want to.
Well, you're about to be on YouTube.
But I don't like. I don't know. I just feel like.
Well, who the hell wants to see me and him? Like what?
But it's interesting. Like obviously, you know, Ewan talking about how there's different strategies, eh?
Yeah. Well, I suppose everyone's got a different strategy and it works for them.
Well, I think we are probably going to have to try and be a bit more visible just to...
But we're our own worst enemy because we don't commit ourselves to being visible for social media, so we're not in that camp. But we don't commit ourselves to being like anti-social media, so we're not in that camp. So we don't fit in that. And the same goes with our music policy of our label. We're a jack of all trades, master of none, is the way I like to put it. Other people will say different, but that's the way I view it is we're our own worst enemy by doing exactly what we want, the way we want. We don't have any consideration of what we should do. Mm-hmm. We just do whatever we want. And by doing that, we are I don't think we fit in a bracket for, say there's a house festival, people are like, okay, your name's on the list. You know, there's the set list of people for a house festival you go to, or a techno festival. There's like, you instantly names are synonymous with the genre.
You've got certain names that
or
pop
like
to head.
Electro stuff, there's like names that are synonymous
with
it.
That's maybe what it is. It's maybe because you're covering so many.
We don't really have we don't fit within a bracket that makes us definable to put, this is where they fit and that's where we'll book them. And I think that makes us our own worst enemy because we sit in this sort of no man's land. That we're not really.
And it probably comes from being resident DJs as well, because we had to warm up for so many different people. You've got such a broad spectrum of music. It just depends what mood we're in as well. Like we could turn up and play like a 140 BPM electro set for 2 hours, but then the next week we'll just play New York house. So it just depends. Yeah. But I think we're now kind of gravitating towards a more solid sound for us playing out and probably what we're going to end up producing. But I don't think the label will change in terms of
it's diversity.
It's still going to be diverse, but us probably as our own output on mixes and when we're playing out in clubs, it's probably going to be
That's something we want
a
to
little
work
bit
on.
more linear. Yeah.
It's
The
to
label's
have it-
obviously defined what it is and what it's about.
Yeah.
And in terms of finding music, what, you know, we get asked this question quite a lot from people. How do you find your music? Because for me personally, I used to go, you know, a couple years ago, I used to like listen to loads of mixes of like some of my favorite DJs, and that had two benefits. It actually made me like listen to a long set and really study how these guys like bring a crowd up, bring it down again, and like the transitions and stuff. That was great, and also just hearing tracks and being like, right, maybe try and find out what is in the comments or whatever. Go and look.
Identification of music.
So that's that's how I used to look for tunes. Now I it's slightly more advanced, looking through the back catalogues of Discogs and that, and really sort of it's a lot more deeper. Finding, not looking at other people's mixes, going and just finding the tracks yourself. In the sense, that's how I kind of do it now. But what's your sort of strategy? And what have you done before?
So
we're very different, I would say.
So Max goes through a lot of, because we're on promo lists, you get a lot. You go through.
Yeah, I used to go through promos. I've my promo one, but I've got a promo email address. It's got 900 unread messages in it in a minute, so I don't keep on top of that at all. I don't know how I find music. I just kind of I listen. I don't have like Mitt just got a more structured way he goes about it, whereas I don't. I just whatever I hear, I know people and people share stuff, and I know labels, and then someone will crop onto my radar, and then I'll know some of the people for that, and I kind of just find what I stumble upon. I don't actively. I'm not a digger. Like which is blasphemy, but I don't.
Yeah.
I could sit here and say, I spend hours a week sitting digging. I spend all my life in a world or an environment, especially through social media or whatever, that is structured around how my life's been for the last 10 years, which is dance music. So I'm always exposed to music through that, which means I can not become lazy, but I don't actively
need to
dig
look for that music.
I do at times, but I'm not like religious about it.
Yeah.
But I'm always exposed to good music through people and new music through people because I've got so many people in the circle.
Yeah, the circle that you surround yourself with.
Interesting.
That I just kind of naturally
drilled into you.
Yeah, just naturally find stuff through that. Whereas Mitch is more structured.
Yeah, I'll go through like back catalogues, or I'll listen to like old mixes. I got like, when I was younger, my uncle gave me like 300 records. So it was like all loads of like old Boo Williams stuff, like Relief. Some like old like French stuff, like is it Cri d'Amour and stuff like that. And I've just kind of like, everything just gets arms and legs on it, so you can like end up. There'll be sometimes I'll listen to stuff on like Bandcamp. I'll listen for 5 hours and I'll find one track.
Yeah.
But there'll be days when I listen for 45 minutes. I find 20 like bangers straight in a row. So it just like it just depends. It's a total.
It's all part of the fun,
and that's what's fun about it. And then when they are open, like I'll try and go through to Rub-a-Dub or Le Freak in Dundee, just to try and support them as well.
Yeah.
But I find like Discogs, like you said, going through back catalogues helps, and then listening to mixes. And the same way that Max does, like we've got a lot of our friends in the industry are like a lot older than us, and they know way more than us, so we'll be talking to them about tunes, and they'll be like, have you heard this? And it'll just be like something totally incredible that you've never heard before, and they're like, oh yeah, we used to play this all the time, and then here's another 10 tracks like that. So it's just like, it's just about sharing. I would never, like if someone came up to the booth and was like, what's that? I'd never be like, I'm not telling you, because I'm like, that's the whole point of music, is to share it with people. Yeah.
Anyone that does that is an absolute roaster. You can put that on the film.
Like. As a DJ, I want to like, and as a punter as well, I want to play tracks that I've found, and people to be like,
like how can you?
You want people asking because you know you're doing a good job.
Yeah, possessive about something that isn't yours.
Yeah, you're possessive of something that isn't yours. Like how much of a like stupid? It's the most stupid thing I've ever heard. Like.
And,
you know who you are.
Yeah.
You know who you are.
With the, you've mentioned a bit, you're hoping to get in producing. Talk us a bit about that.
So I think it's because we've been speaking recently more openly with each other about defining a sort of sound for ourselves. We want to do something a bit new. We want to just have some more fun again and do something new.
Because we like dabbled in it before, but neither of us have got any like neither of us are very good at all. But
I think over time we've grown, and I understand production. I know how to produce music. I understand how the process works. I'm not a professional. I'm not somebody who spends 8 hours a day in the studio, but I understand enough to make music, I believe, that I would like to play.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at now. That we want to make music not for people to stroke their chin to and be like, well, that's fantastic, incredibly produced, because at the end of the day, we've not put in the graft. That takes decades of your time to get to a point where you're like that, and I don't want to ever pretend that we will be at that level, because we've got other things that we need to do in our life. We don't have the time to commit to it. But what I believe we can do is make music that we'd like to play out, and if not, then we'll find out. But we want to give it a go,
and that's why we built the studio effectively.
Yeah. So the studio is surrounded around our Rinse show, so we've got somewhere where we can go. That's turntables, a mixer, CDJs, and a decent setup where we can record our Rinse show. Given the current lockdown situation, we need somewhere where we can record. We need somewhere where we can store our records. Which we've got all that now, and we also have that room at the side, like a soundproof actual studio that we're going to build into a very condensed but efficient small studio setup.
Yeah, and I think the process is probably going to be, like you said, it can be difficult if you're not completely versed in production. So I think basically to begin with is we're just going to say we'll pick a night of the week or pick a day. Start and finish a track that day and leave it alone, and just do that every week.
Yeah.
Until you end up getting something good, because I think because neither of us are complete veterans in production, if we start playing about with stuff too much, we'll spend 3 months on one track, which we did before.
We've done that, and
it's easily done.
Yep.
Drives you mad.
And it's not what I'm saying is quantity over quality. It's not that at all, because we won't release the music, to be honest. We just want to create stuff.
And a lot of our friends who are far more talented than us when it comes to production, a lot of their best tracks are I made that in an hour.
15 minutes, got the drums and the...
It just flows sometimes. I'm in a good stage. I'm still a novice, but I moved over to Ableton and started lockdown, and had all that time. I was on furlough, so I literally spent 8 hours a day doing it, and now I'm in a stage where I can finish a track straight away, and I know this. I've found a good sound now, so I'll actually send you some of the stuff I've done.
You should
100%.
I'm taking a lot of influence from a lot of older house, and putting a bit more of a sort of nice housey beat on it, but I'm got that garage influence as well, which I love. But I can finish it. Sometimes you'll get a groove going and you can just finish it straight away, and it's great. And then sometimes it doesn't happen. You just got to move on.
Take hours to finish one wee part sometimes.
And that's it. We just want to kind of get into a position where we're doing stuff and making it fun, and that's it. And if something comes out of it that we want to release, then thankfully we're in a position where we know how to do that and we've got the means to do it. And if it doesn't, then we've had some fun, and that's it. To be honest, we're not good claiming that we're going to be some world taking over dance act.
You're not going to be the next
you never know.
Groundbreaking. It's not. We know that, and we're okay with that. We've made our peace with that. We're not here to do that. It's just we just want to make some music.
Yeah, I mean, I'd really like to. One of the reasons I want to get back into it is when clubs open again, I want to be back.
Bang out your own tracks.
I want to play the good shows again. You know what I mean? Because when I was doing Odyssey, I was getting good gigs off the back of being relevant and being doing something. Playing festivals and Night Vision, New Year's Eve, and all that sort of stuff. And then when I had a bit of period out of it, just
dies.
It dies, and you don't become a bad DJ. So it's just you're not quite as relevant anymore.
And that's what the thing is with lockdown, however. We've started to see some people with promise for the future book us for the end of the year, which is such a relief. But do people still remember who we are? Do people still?
Well, after this, they will.
Well, no, and that's the question I think we're going to have to answer on it. But it's nice; it gives you a bit of motivation again, because as I say, I think we got a bit too used to what we were doing and maybe a bit complacent.
It's a good reset
and go back at it.
How did you mentioned before? How did the rinse stuff come about?
So once again, the girl who booked us for Boiler Room, she knew the people who ran Rinse, and I had said to her before that if she could help me to speak to them, I wanted to chat to them about putting a show on, and I finally got in touch with them. I had a chat with them for a while, and they said, we need to wait for a slot to come up, but we should have something at some point. We'd like you to do it. So we waited a while, and that second Saturday of the month, 12 till 2 slot came up, and that's ideal. That's perfect. Brilliant. Once a month. So yeah, it's been fantastic.
So have you been down, obviously not now, but have you?
Well, that's the thing.
In the studio?
It happened just at that transition point. So it was we've been doing it for just over a year. So we've essentially not been able to. But yeah, we have the option to go down and go to the studio. And we will definitely do it once we can. But to date, we've not managed to, which is weird in itself.
And what sort of numbers do they get? What sort of numbers do they get?
They don't tell you.
They don't tell you.
It's the same as quite a lot of mixes and stuff. They take the analytics off them, so you can't see.
It's interesting.
And I think as well, if you're not doing well, they'll just say
you're off.
You're not doing it anymore. But I think we're going to try and coincide. Fingers crossed, we're booked to play at the Cause in London in, I think it's July. I don't know if that's
whether or not it'll happen,
but we'll hopefully try and coincide that with a live Rinse show when we're down there, and then there's potential for another big live gig that I can't mention yet, but we hopefully might get to do.
Talk us off air.
Yeah.
Well, are we 5 minute intermission?
Yeah.
We nip to the toilet.
Yeah, I think
we up there.
Call it that then.
Is
it? Back.
Oh, Craigie Knowes. Okay. There we go.
Right, guys.
Right, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Well done.
That's good.
I knew that was long because I was bursting for a piss.
I'm looking on my neck to be a wee bit talking.
I was going to go and answer
There you go, you guys.